All right, I'd like to call to order this regular meeting of the Boulder Valley Board of Education for Tuesday, December 10th, 2019. Laura, would you please call the roll?
Garcia.
Here.
Gebhardt.
Here.
Marquis.
Here.
Myers.
Here.
Sargent.
Here.
Sweeney Moran.
Here.
Ziss.
Here.
Okay, please join us for the Pledge of Allegiance.
States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, and thank you for moving the flag back to the other side of the room. So I'd like to welcome everyone to this evening and remind us all that the mission of the Boulder Valley School District is to create challenging, meaningful, and engaging learning opportunities so that all children thrive and are prepared for successful, civically engaged lives. So we'll start off this evening with the superintendent's report.
Good evening, Board President Marquis, members of the board. It's good to see you this evening. Wanted to start off by celebrating what I thought was a great weekend at CASB for the board. Colorado Association of School Boards had their annual meeting, and our own Vice President, Kathy Gebhardt, is now the past president of CASB. Kathy, I just wanted to thank you publicly for doing an amazing job in serving our entire state of Colorado as CASB president. The tributes and the impact that you've had across this state were just truly amazing to see folks come to support you, and the work that you've done throughout Colorado just was really great. I just wanted to give you kudos and thought it was a great conference, so thank you for that. I want to welcome Lisa and Stacy, our two newest board members, to the board, and looking forward to working with both of you and our whole board as we think about what's in the best interest of the students of Boulder Valley Schools in our community. So welcome. I wanted to give everyone a school visit update. This morning, I finished my 29th school visit over the past 2 months. I spent a good part of the morning at Peak to Peak Charter. Had a great conversation with their leadership team, and some of the work that they're doing around equity was really interesting. The visits that I'm taking are really helping me as a leader stay grounded and keeping my finger on the pulse on what's happening in this district. As I share with teachers, as I'm out meeting with them, I think the biggest fear that I have as a leader is that I get too far away from the work and forget what's happening in the schools, and I've promised myself I'd never allow myself to do that. And so teachers are giving great feedback. We're doing a great work and sharing the exciting things that are happening within our strategic plan and the 6 initiatives that we're taking on this year. And so more than halfway done. And so those visits every time I go is the highlight of my day. And then finally, just to give the board an update on the agenda today is an application to the State Department of Education for the Senate Bill 204 Local Accountability Grant. We have been working closely with several of our neighboring school districts and some school districts across the state to bring that forward to you. I'm very excited about the work that we can do to work together to figure out ways where we can make the accountability systems in Colorado better meet the needs of individual communities. And so I'm very excited about that work and wanted to highlight that as well. And then finally, over the course of the past several of weeks, I wanted to share with the board and the public that Boulder Valley Schools has been getting some national recognition for some of the work that we're doing. So in District Management Journal, and I'll forward this to you all, board, they've highlighted the work that we've been doing with our initiative inventory and data-driven decision-making around budgeting, which I think is really highlighting the incredible work that Bill Sutter, our finance team, Jonathan Dings in assessment, and our team in academics have been doing around how do we make sure that we are ensuring that the public dollars that we have are spent well and are driving the outcomes that we're striving for. And then just recently featured in education leadership was our own Ari Gerzon-Kessler talking about the relationship-centered approach to involving families. Board, as you recall, that Ari presented to you all about a month ago in regards to some of the work he's doing related to our strategic plan. And so just wanted to recognize the great work of our team and just to share with you that folks are taking notice. And so there's really great news. That's all I have.
Thank you. Any questions for Rob pertaining to the superintendent's report? No? Okay. Then we will move on to public participation. So first, I just want to make a comment about this public participation. This evening, this public comment session will also serve as the public hearing for receiving comments on the Elysia Sanchez Unified Improvement Plan that is on our study agenda later in the evening, as the board will not be asking for public comment during the study portion of the agenda. So that is because Elysia Sanchez Elementary is a priority improvement school, and they're undergoing a lot of efforts to improve the outcomes for the students, and there's a set steps and a process for that. And this is one of the parts of that process, to have public comment prior to going over the UIP. So, Ann, do you have a question?
How was the parent community informed that this was the time?
So, you know, we can ask the questions when we go over the UIP. How does that sound? Yes?
Seems backwards, but okay.
Okay. So the next item, so now we're going to do public hearing and public participation. We recognize the value of public comment on issues related to the operation of our schools. To ensure that our meeting is conducted in an orderly manner, we ask that people who address the board confine your comments to matters that are germane to the business of the school district. Speakers on agenda items will be heard first, followed by those speaking to non-agenda items. Limit your presentation to 2 minutes. If we go over the first hour, public comment will continue at the end of the meeting. And recognize that students often attend or view our meetings. Speakers' remarks, therefore, should be suitable for an audience that includes pre-K through 12th grade students. So there is a timing system on Laura's desk, and you can just see her timer, and that gives you where you are. And you will see a yellow card when you have 30 seconds, and when you have 10 seconds, you will see an orange card. At that time, we ask you to please wrap up your comments. All right, so we will begin with our speakers. And tonight we have 2 speakers, and the first speaker is Maria Cordoza.
Directiva. Mi nombre es María Guadalupe Cardoza Pérez. Mis hijos asisten a Centauros High School, Brush Elementary, Farside Elementary, Lusvio Middle School. Soy líder del programa Paso Voz, un programa de padres organizados con las metas de organizar la comunidad para el bienestar comunitario en temas que le interesan a los padres. Hoy vengo a compartir sobre la interpretación en las escuelas. Primero que todo, mencionar, en Farside Elementary siempre han brindado la ayuda, el apoyo cuando necesito interpretación en la escuela. Es un buen ejemplo en cómo mirar la cordialidad y el sistema traducido. También vengo a compartir lo sucedido en las conferencias de padres de la escuela Lusvio Middle School cuando estuve en la conferencia en Paz una vez. En el momento de interpretar, la intérprete me dijo: ¿tú hablas inglés? Adelante. Y sentí que no tenía el derecho en decirme eso. No es para juzgar la vida personal, y si elijo interpretación es porque no tengo la capacidad del 100% de inglés. También quiero decir que en la semana del 21 de octubre hice una llamada al distrito escolar para comunicarme con el Departamento de Educación Especial, y la secretaria me dijo que para qué ahí hablaba, porque ahí no hablaban español, y pedí comunicar. Mi situación era muy angustiante y el Departamento de Educación Especial nunca me devolvió la llamada. Después de contactarme con ellos, creo que el departamento tiene mucha importancia. Este departamento tiene mucha importancia. Debería de haber interpretación rápida y efectiva. Yo quisiera saber por qué tan difícil contactarnos con estas personas. Se les entrena a opinar, porque se les debería de no opinar la vida personal de los padres entre las prácticas éticas. Las secretarias no deben de poner trabas, dificultad más a los problemas de los papás, y sean atentos y tengan personas bilingües, intérpretes en educación especial, porque son temas delicados que se tratan allí. Nomás para recalcar que en el futuro de nuestros hijos está en sus manos y de ustedes queremos cambios de equidad para toda la necesidad para toda la necesidad en estos cambios. Gracias.
Good evening. My name is Abby Ocampo, and I'll be translating for Maria. Good evening, school board members. My name is Maria Guadalupe Cardosa Perez. My children attend Centaurus High School, Birch Elementary, Fireside Elementary, and Louisville Middle School. I'm a leader of El Paso Voz program, and it is a group of organized parents with the goal of organizing their community for community well-being on issues that are of interest to the parents. Today, I come to share about translation in schools. First of all, I want to mention that Fireside Elementary gives me the help and support when I need translation at schools. It is a good example of how cordiality and translation systems should work. I also come here to share what happened at Louisville Middle School parent-teacher conferences. When I was at the conferences, it happened to me once again. The translator said, "I know you speak English, go for it," and I felt she had no right to tell me that. They are not there to judge personal lives, and if I chose translation, it is because I do not have 100% English proficiency. I also want to say that in the week of October 21st, I made a call to the school district to contact the special education department, and the secretary told me why bother, that they didn't speak Spanish there, and I couldn't communicate. My situation was very distressing, and the special education department never called me back. After I still contacted them. I think the department is very important and it should have quick and effective translation systems. I would like to know why it is so difficult to contact people in the district and why there is no cordiality and attention to Spanish speakers. I suggest that translators should be taught not to comment on the personal lives of parents and to be trained on ethical practices. Secretaries should not hinder and make parents' problems more difficult and be attentive and have bilingual people or translators in special education because there are sensitive issues that are dealt there. And finally, I want to emphasize that our children's futures are in your hands and we want equity for all children and changes need to be made to achieve that. Thank you.
Okay, and our next speaker is Andre Fouque. And I'm sorry if I mispronounced your last name.
Good evening. My name is Andre Fouque, and I'm a current senior at Monarch High School, and I'm here to bring more attention and awareness to the school safety and security that we have in place. Before my junior year at Monarch High School, we got the new fob system in place that is supposed to make our school more safe for students and teachers. However, this system is incredibly flawed. For starters, the majority of school incidents, more specifically school shootings that have happened in recent years, have been done from students that go to the school. Secondly, it's very easy to conceal a weapon that can do harm to people inside of a school backpack. And because of this, I'm gonna bring to attention the possibility of metal detectors. Metal detectors have already been used in public schools, more specifically inner city schools such as Detroit, Chicago, the Compton area, Florida schools. And by Florida schools, I mean Stoneman Douglas High School, Parkland. 2018, we got the tragic news that 17 kids had been shot and killed in Stoneman Douglas High School in Parkland, Florida. And it was also after that, for the new school year, that the Stoneman Douglas High School had to introduce metal detectors in order to prevent this from happening again. In 1999, we had something similar happen in Colorado at Columbine. Students got shot and killed, including 12 students, 1 teacher. After that, Columbine High School introduced metal detectors to better protect students and teachers. Since 1999, there have been 230 school shootings. I'm not sure if that is enough or if there needs to be more in order for it to be brought to the attention that something needs to be done better than fobs. I understand that metal detectors can be a little expensive. However, the ones used in schools, specifically inner city schools, cost $4,000. 2 years ago, my school spent $250,000 on a renewed weight room. If a school can do this, I think a school can also find the ability and the money to better protect the students with metal detectors. That way things like Parkland and Columbine are less likely to happen in our district. So finally, I want to say, if anything should be done, I don't know if this has been brought to the board before, but if it has, I'd like to make it that it's reconsidered, because I don't think that the lives of students should have a budget issue or that budget should be a problem for it. Thank you.
Thank you so much. So the next item on our agenda is board comment, board communication. And board members, as we go around, as Laura mentioned in an email to us, we traditionally have made a comment or two about something we learned at the Colorado Association of School Boards. And we go to this conference every year. It's a big part of our professional development as board members, but it does have a burden to our taxpayers. So I do like to mention, just to make you understand that we're working on our ability to be better board members and better advocates in our state. So with that, who would like to start with board communication? Okay, Stacy.
First, I'd like to say how happy I am to be here on the board, and I look forward to serving everybody for the next 4 years. Regarding CASB, the Colorado Association of School Board Conference, I was fortunate enough to go with the rest of my board, and a couple things that I took away. One is that it's very inspiring to be around so many school board members that just want to make the educational experience for their students better. Not one person was there for any other reason. So I thought that that was really inspiring. The other thing that I took away was there were quite a few sessions about mental health of students, and it's not surprising. We've all been talking about that for a long time. So I look forward to sharing what we've learned about that and other topics as we move forward. Thank you.
Okay, Kitty.
Yeah, a couple of the workshops that I wanted to point out that I attended, one was the pre-conference training on youth mental health first aid. And it was really a valuable training because it teaches people who are not mental health professionals, which is the vast majority of us, how to recognize when a student may be in a mental health crisis and how to respond to it and how to not respond to it, which is just as important. And I think that's a training, everybody in this working in schools and people in the community could really benefit from. Because as Stacy said, their mental health for students is a big issue right now. And then the other thing I wanted to point out that I went to was about teens in stress. And Jenny Brundine from Colorado Public Radio has been doing a series on this, and I had heard a number of them, and then it turned out she was presenting. And it's very interesting, and I really recommend, if you'd like to learn more about that, go to Colorado Public Radio. It's cpr.org, and if you do /teens, you'll find the reporting on it. But one of the things that really struck me, what we were talking about the use of cell phones, because kids are reporting that they know they spend too much time on their cell phones, and they would like to spend less time on their cell phones. One of the recommendations was for the adults in their lives to model appropriate cell phone use. The teens are reporting their parents are talking to them while they're looking at their phones like this. So in that spirit, I would like to challenge the rest of the board members to join me in never using my cell phone during a meeting. One, we're going to be setting a good example for our students. We've already banned cell phones in the middle schools. High school students can't use them during class, and I think as the leaders of the school district, we need to be modeling that example.
It's a big ask.
Hey, we went a long time without cell phones.
But it changed. No, that's a great idea. Donna?
I, too, had a great time attending with my fellow board members and the CASB convention. One speaker I really enjoyed was local, and I'm sure Kathy had something maybe to do with having her come, but Rosalind Wiseman. And she gave a really good talk about the difference between, and I took pictures of the slides, but I know you can find it online as well, the difference between respect and dignity. And I really enjoyed hearing that because we often tell our children, you need to show respect no matter what. And she said, no, respect is earned, dignity or worth is given. And that really impacted me. She also talked about us modeling consent. And we have a lot of issues with consent in our district over various things. And one thing that hit home for me as a grandmother is I will take a picture of my little 2-year-old grandson. And even if he says no, and I'm like, come on, Isaac, it's going to be cute. And I take it. And that hit home to me. It's like, okay, you don't want me to take it. We'll take it another time when you're feeling better or something. So, just modeling what no means and respecting that. So I enjoyed that. Also, one of my favorite things, as always, is meeting the kids. And I sat at breakfast beside Dylan and Jonah. And both of them had just inspiring things to say. I was really happy to hear that our community is partnering with our schools. And lo and behold, one community business near and dear to me, Ball Aerospace, they've only supported me for 35 years. But Dylan was an intern there. And to see that connection between our schools, our mature students, and that our community businesses are offering the internships, that was really good to hear. And then Jonah, to hear his story about his mother being assistant principal, and I know her well. And I said, how is it to have your mom as the assistant principal, and here you are a student? And he said, it's great because I can go to her office anytime with all my friends and get snacks. So it was just a fun to get to know the students better and to hear the issues in the school. I also want to thank Maria and Andre for pointing out to us ways that we can do better. And I think this conference always speaks to me on ways we can do better and what we need to do to support you and our students. Thank you.
Okay, Richard.
I'll get to my CASB comments in a minute. Muchas gracias, Maria, por estar aquí esta noche. Thank you very much for being here tonight. And Andre, thank you for pointing out your concerns around school safety. I guess my question, Rob, is will we get some kind of a presentation at some point in terms of our interpretation, translation capacity that we have in our school district, and what can we do to improve that?
Yeah, we can certainly get the board information on that, and then as we think about setting budget priorities as a team, that's certainly something that we can consider how it is aligned to our strategic plan and especially our efforts around family engagement.
And I thought I heard another concern that Maria pointed out, and that was the concern around cordiality as it relates to our staff. I think maybe we need to do something around either some more professional development around cordiality, especially with the front office staff and some of our department people.
I would also say that as we think about the efforts that we're doing within our strategic plan around not only family engagement but being culturally responsive, I think that there is work that is already planned to be addressing those things, but certainly we want to follow up and check into these situations to better understand what happened.
Thank you very much. Now, in terms of CASB, I need to be very honest that I got there late and I left early, so I wasn't able to see a whole lot of presentations. The one that I did attend, and I really appreciated that particular presentation, was on culturally responsive education that was provided by the Denver Public Schools staff and board member. That was a good presentation, but it seems to me like we're either getting close to what they're doing or probably surpassing what they're doing a little bit. I need to look at it a little bit more. I got the slide presentation that they gave us, but it's really appreciated that at CASB now we're seeing the importance of culturally responsive education, and I thank you, Kathy, for doing that and supporting those efforts, because I know that equity is something that's really deep in your heart and things that you want to make sure that we really pay a lot of attention to. So thank you very much. And the conference was wonderful. It was great. One of the things that I always get when I go to the CASB conference is my networking, the networking that we're able to do while we're there, because there's a lot of school board members there. I mean, that place was full of people. and it was exciting to be there. The one session that I did want to see and I wasn't able to see, but I know who I need to contact to make sure that I get that session. It was the one that talked about really trying to get your community involved in the equitable processes. And I think it was done through a member of CEI, if I'm not mistaken. So I'll get a hold of Rebecca and see if I can't get more information on that. But it was great. And it was really good because while we were there, we were also able to do our own board retreat while we were there, and that was extremely beneficial. So thank you very much.
Lisa?
Yeah, CASB was great. As a new board member, it was fantastic to get to dive into so much information all at once right off the bat, and to get to learn more about the solutions and challenges from districts around the state. In particular, I really enjoyed some of the seminars on both finance and accountability, which were really interesting and taught by people who know an enormous amount about it. I was thankful to have their expertise, and I look forward into digging into both more in the next few months.
Kathy?
I guess being the veteran, having gone to CASB probably 20 years, I always enjoy the collegiality, the lessons I learned, the differences, but yet the commonality that we have from districts that graduate 10 to 20 students to districts that are, as big as Denver, which is 10% of our whole state. So I personally could have listened to Kai Kite, who was one of our keynote speakers, play the violin for hours. I thought he was pretty amazing, and some of his analogies about air violining, which I don't know that I could do, but I could practice, and just the role of conductors and all that, I thought was really helpful. I unfortunately didn't get to go to a whole lot of breakout sessions because I was kind of running around, but I really appreciated everybody being there and everybody putting all the effort into learning. To your point, Tina, I don't think boards get a lot of opportunities to do that, and they don't get a lot of professional development. Some states require it, we don't. So I think that CASB offering that to school boards is a valuable service, and I really appreciate the ability and willingness of the district to send us. And I just want to say thank you to all of you for your support. When I got up to give my speech and I had my iPad upside down, nobody laughed at me, and people were understanding, so thank you. Can I give my board comment really quickly? It's not just CASB. So thank you to Maria and to Andre for coming. As Richard said, I really welcome your comments of how we can look at things, and it's always helpful to hear issues from people who are experiencing them, so I really appreciate you bringing those issues forward. And then today I had the opportunity to go to a Vision 2020 event, which we will be hearing a whole lot more about when we're actually in 2020. But it is an effort that's been going on for a good 4 years now through the Colorado Fiscal Institute, and it is their intent to put something on the ballot. They have a tool on their website if anyone wants to look at it that identifies the options, and they range from a graduated income tax to a full repeal of Tabor. And pretty soon, because it takes 6 months to collect signatures, and they're going through an initiated referral, not something from the legislature, they're going to have to decide pretty soon. So I would imagine we'll be bringing those issues and concerns to the board here in the near future. But it was good to hear the thinking that's going on, and I can say I don't envy the person who's making the final decision, given that wide spectrum of decisions as to how to go forward. So thanks again for the support and for attending CASB. I really appreciate it.
Okay, and I'll just comment on the Vision 2020 survey. I went through it, and it really explains the issues well, and it increased my knowledge of sort of school financing and what some of the options are. So it was worth even just going through it for an educational purpose. I thought it was well written. And I wanted to also thank Maria and Andre for coming and giving us some ideas about how we can make our student experiences better. So I really appreciate you being here. And it's always especially exciting to have a student here. We don't get a lot of students that come and speak out to us, so we appreciate it. Just echoing what Rob said, Kathy, thank you for all your service for the CASB. It was a great conference. I am the CASB curmudgeon of the group, but I did have a good experience. The couple of things that I brought back from CASB was first the same presentation that Richard went to. I'm carrying my deck with me. Yeah. And I think one of the things I liked the best about it is, let me get to my slide. Well, I like two things about it. The first is that it wasn't just me and Richard. It was me, Richard, Elysia, Kitty, and Donna all got there without coordinating. So that's for 5 board members to go to the same panel. I think it's the first time ever. Except for the keynote or something. So, and one of the goals of this culturally responsive education presentation is to meet this outcome. It says, in the final year of the Denver Plan 2020, we're targeting each cornerstone with high-impact strategies in order to disrupt historical patterns of inequity and maximize student achievement. And I especially appreciated the activism of those words and the intent behind them. The other piece I enjoyed was I went to a panel with some legislators talking about school funding and sharing their opinions on modifications to Tabor. And Jim Wilson made a comment that from the perspective of someone who is more reluctant to change Tabor or school finance, he was asking for school districts to make it more clear how we are accountable to our taxpayers, especially in the context of student achievement, which has been stagnant over the last 10 years in the state of Colorado. So I took that to heart, and I'm hoping that we can present information in a more digestible way to convince taxpayers that we are responsible stewards of our money and that we are making a difference in student outcomes, which I believe wholeheartedly that we are. And then that's it. I just wanted to also point out on that finance piece that we had our audit today, and that will be on the consent agenda, so I'll bring it up now. But as usual, our staff did a fantastic job with the audit. And they received 2 recognitions for the excellence of their work in managing our monies and being good stewards of our taxpayer dollars. So I just wanted to recognize staff for that. And we're in a good financial position, I think, moving ahead. So, yes.
So Kitty, to your point about stress, Jenny Brundine reached out to this district and has asked for a teacher to be on a panel on Monday. So thanks to Rob and Don Stenzert and a teacher who's agreed to step up to talk about that, because as she put it, Boulder's kind of the epicenter of stress for students. At least we have that reputation, whether it's deserved or not. I'm sure it's shared at least. So I think there's going to be that discussion on Monday. So I just wanted to pass that along to you.
Monday on the radio?
Yes, so on CPR.
And my last comment is I was able to go to a conversation that was hosted by the Jewish Community Center here in Boulder about bias and anti-Semitism in our community following some incidents that were reported on the Pearl Street Mall and other places. I appreciated Michael Doherty's words about the work he's doing in the community to tackle hate crimes and bias. I wasn't aware that there was a number for reporting hate crimes. And so I just was letting board members know, if you find someone in the community who's been a victim of a hate crime or bias, that there's a number with a live person to answer and ask questions to report that incident. So you can find it on the Boulder District Attorney's website. All right, so our next item is, yes, Richard?
I just want to give a shout out to the students that were there, because that student breakfast was great, and I understand, and I can't remember her last name, but Paola was part of that student panel, and I believe she's a senior at Boulder High School.
Junior.
So, do you remember her last name?
No, well, I know part of it was Garcia.
Yeah. But anyway, a huge shout out to Paola that I think she represented her school district well. I wasn't there to see it, but I'm just feeling it.
You felt right. She did a wonderful job on the student panel.
And one of the students said, all of you are here are obviously engaged, that engagement allows us to become our better selves. And so from the wisdom of students, I think it's awesome to hear that kind of advice to us adults.
Okay, so we'll move on to our information items. Our first information item is 6.1, presentation of election information. This is our Boulder County Clerk and Recorder. Is that correct?
Good evening, board members. How are you? Thank you so much for having me. My name is Molly Fitzpatrick. I'm the Boulder County Clerk and Recorder as of January, so it's nice to meet and all of you and be here with you. And thank you, Laura, for organizing this, especially at the end of the year when I know you're trying to cram a bunch of things in. So I've got my timer up here, and I'm going to adhere to the time constraints I've been given, which is 10 minutes. So let's see here. We wanted to just get in front of you all and let you know what we're looking at as we turn toward 2020. I know many of us were just engaged in a big way in the 2019 elections, but we are already thinking about 2020. And, as leaders in our community, we know that you will be asked a lot of questions as we go into next year about the process and about the changes that we're going to be seeing. So we wanted to provide a high-level overview of what's coming so you have the information, and also just that just so you all know that we're always here as a resource to you all. And we also wanted to go over some of our high school-specific engagement work that we're looking to do in 2020. So you all will be asked a lot of information about next year because elections are going to be happening very frequently. We have 3 elections in 2020. We have our presidential primary, which is a brand new election, and that's happening on March 3rd. So we basically wrapped up the 2019 election, and we are already in implementation mode for the March 3rd presidential primary, which I'll go over more in just a moment. And then in June, we will still have our primary, and that will be for statewide races and contests, congressional seats, so on and so forth. And then we have our November election, which will be a really big election. The Atlantic actually had an article that over the summer that said, "Prepare for a voter tsunami." So I'm assuming you all are well aware that that is coming. So we wanted to make sure that you all knew about the presidential primary because it is a new election. There's only going to be one contest on the ballot, and that is our for president. They will only have a Democratic and a Republican primary. Minor parties do not have a presidential primary. Unaffiliated voters will be receiving 2 ballots in the mail in one envelope, and that is a new change. We had that in 2018. So unaffiliated voters can now participate in our primaries, which is fantastic, but they can only vote for one party's ballot. And this is brand new as of this spring in the 2019 legislative session. If you will be 18 by the general election, you will be eligible and able to participate in both the presidential primary and the summer primary. So that's really, really important, and we would love to have your influence in educating students and educators around that new option for young voters. And there are still going to be caucuses. Those are going to be run by the party, and that will determine party leadership, and also it's a way to get onto the ballot in the first place. So here's some critical dates. For some reason that is not showing up perfectly, but we will be mailing ballots out starting at the end of January, actually. And then in February is when we'll open up our drop boxes and then begin mailing out voter ballots to all voters. We will have 5 voter service and polling centers, which students can go to register to vote or to vote in person if that's what they would like to do. And then we have them listed up here. We'll have our 3 clerk and recorder offices, and then CU and Front Range in Longmont as well. So we wanted to provide, again, a high-level overview of how Colorado's election system is unique because we do feel like you will be asked some of these questions next year. So I really refer to Colorado as an all-option state. Every registered voter gets a ballot sent to them, and what they choose to do with that ballot is their choice. They can mail it in, they can drop it off, or they can go to a voter service and polling center to vote in person if that's what they would like to do. We do have same-day voter registration here in Colorado, so voters can register to vote up to and on Election Day. And the most important thing, I think, to walk away with for everyone is that we do not have a voter registration deadline in Colorado. You can register again on Election Day, same day, and that is a change from 2013. We used to have an arbitrary voter registration deadline in the middle of October, and we no longer have that. So We also have voter pre-registration for 16 and 17-year-olds, and we've had voter pre-registration since 2015. And we always like to highlight that privacy privacy was really baked into the original legislation. Actually, I'm getting ahead of myself, I'm sorry. So students can register as early as 16 years old. And this is really great because it really does get a young person thinking about their role in our democracy started before they're even eligible to cast a ballot. As I was mentioning, we do have some protections in place to preserve their anonymity and their privacy. They only need a Colorado driver's license or ID card or the last four of their social in order to register to vote. So parents, you will be getting asked that question when a student wants to register to vote. They can go online to register. They can register in person with a voter registration deadline. And we'll be going over some more information on how we're working to support high schools in promoting this information to actually providing voter registration forms. But registration information of these minors is confidential until they're 18 years old. So even if a young person, 16 years old, goes online to check their registration status, they won't be able to find it because it is confidential information. And again, that was baked into the original legislation to protect that anonymity and privacy. So again, voters who are going to be 18 will be eligible to vote on the March election and in the June election. They have the right to participate in the caucuses that will be occurring in the spring as well. They might need a form from our office verifying that they are eligible to participate in that caucus. So just get in touch with us or tell other people, students, to get in touch with our office if they need that form, and we'd be happy to provide that, and they will need ID. So this is something that we're especially excited about as we look toward 2020. We are going to be reaching out to all of the high schools to identify a voter registration liaison. And really that person, we're looking to partner with that person to provide voter registration and election information to students in 2020. One, because it will likely be the first time that high school students have participated in, it'll be their very first election, and so as being brand new to the process, there's a lot of mechanics that we want to be sure that they know how to navigate through and with, and also just because of all the new changes with being able to participate in these primaries. So what we're currently doing is identifying who these voter registration liaisons are going to be. We want to train them in the basics of voter registration, and then we also really want to make it as easy as possible for them. We want to supply them with the information they need to educate their students, and so we're looking at putting together some sample posters, handouts, voter registration forms, give them sort of a one-stop shop for what they need to promote this information, including intercom announcements and that sort of thing. And in addition to that, we're also really looking forward to you looking at our High School Voter Registration Awareness Week proclamation. This is something that we would love to have you support. We would love to have a proclamation that really does demonstrate BVSD's support of high school civic engagement during such a formative time in a young person's life. And we really think this is a way to create a lot of buzz and create a lot of excitement around participating in our democracy. And so you all have that information, I believe, in your packet. And the purpose is, again, just to create a lot of buzz and to enhance the voter registration liaison program as well. And so it would be essentially just supporting this idea of civic engagement efforts, partnering with voter registration drives that work with high school students, partnering with our office. We'd be happy to come and table or do a classroom presentation or an assembly, and really just be any sort of resource that the schools would like. And again, the purpose would be to demonstrate BVSD support for civic engagement efforts, to create some buzz, and to really create a surround sound of support for young people participating in our elections process. And we would like to have this be ideally the first week of February because it's before the presidential primary, and then that momentum would carry forth into the summer primary and the general election as well. We can also do it the last week of January if that would be better as well. And so if you have thoughts, comments, or questions, Laura will we've been communicating about this, so we can coordinate that way. And I think that is about it. Oh, no, it's not. So we just wanted to highlight our Colorado election model because we know security and cybersecurity is really a hot topic right now, to say the least. And we will be doing public tours for each election next year to have folks really come in and observe firsthand to see how we're centering security, both cyber and physical, at the how we're centering those values throughout our entire process. And I think a lot of you probably already have this information, but we have paper ballots and risk limiting audits and all kinds of things that really do enhance our security posture here in Colorado. So I just wanted to make that plug as well. And of course, as I mentioned, come to our public tours. Please promote the public tours when we post them online and when we send them out via email. And that's all I have, and we just want to end by saying we appreciate your dedication to our community. We are always here as a resource, especially as we look towards next year with so many changes, with such a big election, and we appreciate your time. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Yeah, Katie, you want to ask a question?
I just have one question, because I know you don't have to, there's no deadline registering to vote. However, to participate in a caucus, the rules haven't changed on that, have they?
I would contact the local parties.
My understanding and how it's always been is that there is a deadline to register if you will want to participate in a party caucus.
Right, and I believe that's tied to your precinct. So there's some deadlines there. I would contact the local party for that information as well. Yeah.
Richard?
Just a quick question on the slide where it talks about what makes Colorado elections unique. Voters can register and vote on the same day after election day. ID required. Is that a government issued ID that you're talking about, or could it be a birth certificate?
There's a lot of options. That's a great question. There are a lot of options, and we will have that information in the ballot envelope and in the voter service and polling centers. Common forms are Colorado driver's licenses, an ID from an institution of higher education. A high school ID wouldn't work, but there's a lot of different options available. But I would say the most common is a Colorado ID or passport. Utility bill, we do not require a photo ID in Colorado, but it does need to be a Colorado ID.
Stacy?
This is really just an FYI, but I believe that there are some teachers that are already doing this with their students.
Mm-hmm.
My 16-year-old at Boulder High is already registered to vote. I think his U.S. history teacher did it. So
Great.
you have some advocates out there already.
Fabulous. Yeah, and if there are people that you know of already that would be interested or are already doing this work, we'd love to coordinate on that and especially identify some students that could help advance the work, because I think that peer-to-peer outreach and connection is going to be the most effective method for not only educating but also getting them to register and vote, because if you see your friends doing it and your friends telling you, it's much more compelling than anybody else. But I will say having the teachers and BVSD support this is huge, because you all are there day in and day out. They see you as trusted resources on this information, and so we wanted to really just supply this to you so you all had it.
Kathy?
Are you coordinating with the League of Women Voters as well to do the high school outreach? Because I think they have an independent outreach trying to get to the same population.
Mm-hmm.
So I think they've done some good work trying to set up some contacts in the high school. And I'm just curious, Rob, do we have a plan to help support this in February, or we get follow-up on it? Are we going to do anything?
No, we certainly can. It can provide follow-up for the board. We don't have an articulated plan right yet.
Not yet.
Yeah, no, we can totally follow up with you.
And it certainly is encouraging to see we're first in a good area, which is first in voter security. So often we see ourselves on the education front as last in things, so it's nice to see us being first. So thanks for sharing that statistic with us.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. And with that, we'll move on to our next item, which is 6.2, 2020-21 Budget Development Process Timeline and Milestones.
I'd like to invite Carrie Albright, our Director of Budget, who will be presenting the budget development process, timeline, and milestones to you all this evening. Carrie.
Thank you. Thank you, President, members of the board. My name is Carrie Albright, the Budget Director at BVSD, and this evening I would like to present the annual update for the budget development process and milestones along the way. The same presentation was given by Bill Sutter, CFO, back on September 17th, so it may be familiar to you. Regarding the timeline overall, for the last few years, we have begun the budget process as early as September, providing additional opportunities for conversation and input. Throughout the 10-month period, there are stakeholder options available. Listed on the slide are several parent and community groups, all which can provide feedback to the board members and the superintendent. Next, we layer in the scheduled board meetings and work sessions. During the time frame, there are 27 meetings scheduled. These are opportunities for the public to attend board meetings and provide comments relative to the budget timeline and items. Next, we layer on the data inputs. These are points along the way where we receive information which helps guide the budget development, helps let us know where we are and where we're going in the future. The very first one is the release of the governor's budget. Also included here are enrollment updates, as well as state and local revenue forecasts. This slide lists all of the data points where we receive information which can impact the budget development. Next, we have feedback sessions that are board meetings and work sessions which have specific budget-related topics on the agenda. These are not every single board meeting. As I mentioned, the public has the opportunity at any board meeting to provide comments. Rather, these are meetings where on the agenda there's an associated budget development item to discuss. Next, we have action items. These are places along the way in which a specific action will need to be taken by the board and the district. For example, the staffing allocations which go out between February and April, for the most part, commits 90% of the general operating budget. So when we release staffing out to schools and departments, it is committing a significant portion of the budget. Also listed are action items to approve, such as the staffing allocation, notification to employee groups if there needs to be a reduction in force, and then the final budget adoption by June 30th. So when you layer these all on together, it paints a picture of the complexity of the budget development process. Some key takeaways are that this is a very long process. There are data points along the way which are critical to know before decisions can be made. There are numerous opportunities for stakeholder engagement along the way. Community feedback sessions, public comments at board meetings, and then finally the data which affects the development of the budget comes in throughout the whole process. With that, I can take any questions.
Thank you. It's exhausting to look at. Any questions about the development process, board members? We have seen this material before, so pretty familiar. We're getting more familiar, I think, with this process.
Yes.
All right. Well, with that, we can move on to our next item. Thanks so much.
Sure.
Okay, the next is 6.3, the CBOC update to the board. And I see part of our CBOC group.
Good evening, President Marquis, members of the board, and Dr. Anderson. I am Rob Price, Assistant Superintendent of Operational Services. I am joined tonight by Scott Stevens, Executive Director of Bond Planning, John Stanton, who is our Citizens Bond Oversight Chair, and Stephanie Jackman, Lafayette Elementary School Principal. So at this time, I'll turn it over to Scott to provide an update.
Good evening, Board President Marquez, Dr. Anderson, members of the board. It's my privilege to be here with you tonight. Since the passing of the 2014 Bond issue, BVST has completed 76% of the overall scope, including 47 of the 63 master plan projects, and have expended approximately $514.6 million to date. We are wrapping up minor items with the 2019 summer projects, continuing work on the Culinary Center and Ed Center. In 2020, we will begin construction on 12 more projects, which will leave 2 more projects to complete in the scope of the 2014 bond master plan work. We've also identified some future projects that may be funded with bond premium or project savings. These include renovating the Reich Field House at Boulder High, air conditioning schools as funding will allow. Regarding the air conditioning, after the first of this coming year in January, we will be issuing an RFP for design build services to add cooling to remaining schools that do not have that currently. Once we have the designs complete, we'll be able to determine total cost and investigate funding sources, how we can get that done. Work at the Education Center campus is moving ahead steadily. You've probably seen it if you've driven by the site recently. We'll continue through the next summer. The Culinary Center, located to the south of the building here, is enclosed and the interior construction is underway. Project is still on schedule and will be ready to serve food next school year, fall of 2020. Construction of the foundation of the new wing of the Ed Center is in progress. Paving of the auxiliary upper deck parking lot should be complete by the end of this year. I'd like to turn the presentation over now to John Stanton, and he'll go over the CBOC review. Thank you.
Thanks, Scott. Good evening. I'm John Stanton, the current chair of CBOC, the Citizens Bonds Oversight Committee. Since we came and presented last time, we've had one meeting. It was an exciting meeting. We actually had that at Angevine Middle School. Principal Mike Medina gave us a tour. If you've not gone on one of these tours, if you guys have heard me say this before, you should come out to a tour. And the reason is you saw a number up there, $515 million. And it's always stunning to me as a board member or a committee member to go out and say, well, where did that money go? And it's always interesting to see where it went, and then also where you can't see where it went, on the roof and the construction and the, in the different parts. And then, the team always gives us great tours, and it's always very exciting too to have the principals, and we're glad to have one here tonight, to also say this is where the money went. So I would recommend the next time we have one, I'm not sure it's going to be in January where we're going to have it yet, but probably March will be our next tour, and I invite you to come on out and also see the exciting work we do when we talk about a bunch of numbers. And that's what we'll talk about real quick. This meeting had a lot of numbers in it, and we actually had a staff recommendation to move $3.8 million from program reserves into three more project budgets. Those additional funds were needed to cover basically the escalating cost. As most of us know, cost of construction has gone up since these original budgets were created. So that was part of the basically to meet the master plan, and those were approved. We also we actually approved, can talk real quick, $7.6 million of the premium to go to 7 project budgets just for air conditioning, and 3.9 to go to University Hill. That is one of the more contentious of the items, and there was a lot of discussions around Uni Hill, and I just wanted to make sure the board was aware. This was one of the first times that we did not have a unanimous vote in the committee. And there's a lot of concern in the committee, and I think a lot of activism. A lot of the folks that are still on the committee have been doing this a while, and there's a concern that the University Hill building, no matter how much money we put into it, will not come up to the standards of our other properties. And so that is just a message back from the committee. They did approve it because it was in part of the original scope and the recommended scope to get it close, but the committee is concerned that that building just has some challenges to it, and that no amount of money is going to keep it at the level we need it. So that was part of a lot of discussions. The other part of the discussion that came out was air conditioning. And as Scott was saying, there wasn't enough bomb premium to put air conditioning. It wasn't part of the original scope, and we were fortunate that we were able to get additional premiums, and we're able to do as much as we can. We've actually committed almost 100% of all the bond premium that is projected now. So the committee now on the oversight, we have one basically big project left, and that's New Vista. And that will be starting at least part of the conversation in January meeting. Let's see, where was I? The financial oversight, that's one of the most exciting parts. We actually go over lots of numbers, and if you don't like numbers, it's challenging to be in the committee, but most of us like the numbers. We review basically everything, and like Scott said, $515 million to date, $40 million are also now contracted, and 122 left. Like I said, most of that is now on budgets. There's very little program reserve left, and unless some of the projects return back, most of our decisions are made for the committee unless something comes up and we have to move some stuff around. Are there any questions?
All right.
Comments?
Questions? Donna?
On slide number 3, which isn't, which you weren't up giving, design bidding, will you remind me what Sombrero Marsh?
Yes. I'm going to answer your question, but we also have a little bit more presentation to do, but I'm going to go ahead and answer your question now, and then if I can, I'd like to finish the presentation and we'll continue. Sombrero Marsh is the school that's, or the location that's here behind the Ed Center to the south. We're doing some interior work inside of the building and also some site work to help the parking situation that's back there as well. It's around $350,000-ish, I believe. Okay. Okay. Great. That's fine.
All right.
Sorry
about that.
That's okay. That's all right. I know, it's John's fault. It's okay. Tonight we've invited Lafayette Elementary School Principal Stephanie Jackman to join us and share her perspective on the project that we did at her school over the summer. But before I turn it over to Stephanie, I'll just give you a brief overview of the project. And to the public, a little taste of what we are doing, and these projects are getting more and more challenging, seems like, every year. So this project was a $10.2 million renovation project, which included enhancement to classrooms, such as new paint, carpet, lights, windows, marker boards, and casework, which will provide noticeable boost to the look and feel of the classrooms. Audio enhancement was installed in all learning spaces, and we continue to hear enthusiastic, positive feedback on that. We also, these upgrades, along with replacement of outdated and worn-out systems, such as the roof, the HVAC, exterior concrete, asphalt, and life safety systems, have extended the life of the building in approximately another 25 years. School has invested its innovation funding to renovate the central part of the school, including library, cafeteria, and former book room to encourage flexible use throughout the day. You can see that photo there at the middle top of students utilizing that. And then also, as, like many other schools, renovations at Lafayette Elementary included construction of a directed entry vestibule to help staff monitor and control visitor access to the school. The project also included a major playground renovation. Students at the school were invited to help select equipment for the new playground. They knew what they were doing. The results were loved by kids and adults alike. Some of those adults you may recognize. Now I'll turn it over to Ms. Jackman to share with you some of her thoughts about the project, and then we'll answer questions.
Good evening. I'm very excited to be here tonight and just to celebrate all of the hard work that went on. I'm here to say it's all worth it. I started, this process, I was being the principal at Lafayette. I've been in the building for 10 years, and I started this process maybe early April, a couple years ago, planning and to get to the end product and basically have a new building, but still keep the same charm and unique feeling of Lafayette, because we were able to upgrade our building and still keep some of the artwork and all those things that still make our building special. So all the students and the parents, and they came back at the beginning of the year, were like, I love the new building, I love the new building. And we have the same charm of our building, but air conditioning, which makes a huge difference, a safer building, a happier building, and I believe Lafayette Elementary was a happy building before, but all of these updates that happened through part of the bond just made us a happier, safer, and the kids are super excited about all of those changes that have happened. when we started this process, you're looking at you look at your building to find out, is it a one-size-fits-all? And it's not. It's a specific plan set up for Lafayette Elementary. And we were able to maximize everything that we could with the bond. A lot of the pictures that are here really show the difference that it made. I have gotten probably more persuasive essays about a new playground in the 10 years I've been there, and now we have that. And now I can just say all of the upgrades that happened to our building have transformed our learning. It's transformed our teaching. We started with a huge purge of a building. We had every single space used before Meadowlark opened up, and then we had spaces that weren't being used that we needed to look at. And by going through this purge process and knowing that everything was going to be recycled or reused or repurposed allowed us to really look at how we were filling our spaces, and then how can we open up those spaces and make it a happier place and a more exciting place for students. And we also, by having a delayed start, that helped our community be able to prepare, knowing that they were watching it along the way. They were watching and seeing, there's no way our school is going to be ready. And by having that delayed start, we were able to maximize the start of the school year and being able to really focus on professional learning and learning about how to be more innovative teachers. And so I'm grateful for the team that we had. The bond team was extremely responsive, very collaborative, and it's all worth it. So I'm thankful for that we had this opportunity to transform our school. And for me as a principal, being in that building for 10 years, it really is like being in a brand new building, but still keeping the same charm of our school. So thank you. Thank you to our team, and just very grateful for how we transformed our school as part of this process.
Lastly, I'd like to recognize Gene Tiemanson, who's here sitting next to Stephanie tonight. He was our project manager on the Lafayette project and did an excellent job of keeping us on schedule, on budget, and doing the hard lifting when he had to. So with that, I'd like to answer any questions.
All right, thank you so much. And thank you, Principal Jackman, also for being here. So questions? Richard.
Thank you very much for the presentation. It was really great. And go Lafayette Elementary. I just need to understand a little bit more in terms of what the issues are at University Hill Elementary School, and I'm not sure when we're going to be able to get into some of that discussion. I think at one time we currently have two really old buildings in the district, and that's Whittier Elementary as well as University Hill Elementary. And then if you add Mapleton Early Childhood Education Center, that's 3. And then if you remember, you had Washington Bilingual, which were all the brick 2-story buildings that we had. So I just need to understand what those issues are at University Hill Elementary, because I know we've talked about it before, and we keep pumping more money and more money and more money, and the Bach team, and they had issues, they weren't in agreement. Could you enlighten me on that?
So we met with the Board of Education in a work session, and I'm trying to remember back when this was, and we prioritized the remaining dollars. And we prioritized those dollars to add a cafeteria expansion to the existing building. We as a board and as a staff made the decision to stay in that building a long time ago. So the discussion was not about what do we do with Uni Hill, it's about moving forward with the bond and building the cafeteria expansion. And that's what the Citizens Bond Oversight reviewed and recommended, or is recommending to you. So the discussion was really around the building is built in the early 1900s, we understand that. And then it got into now are we using those same dollars that could be used for air conditioning the other 7 schools that are not currently air conditioned. So we moved forward with design based on board directive on designing and constructing a cafeteria expansion. So does that answer your question, Richard?
Yes and no.
Okay.
I guess if I look at, and I know that we've talked about the high maintenance in terms of that particular school, and I'm just wondering what the maintenance cost is like for Whittier, for example, because it's also an old building.
Yep.
And we were able to get Whittier to a place where it's.
And we'll get Uni Hill to that same place. So right now we're spending the majority of our money at Uni Hill on the mechanical system. That mechanical system is still original to the building in the intermediate building. So we'll be replacing all of that mechanical system there and at the primary building. So that's the majority of our expense right now, so we'll be avoiding that expense. And then again, on the roofing, we're going to be re-roofing a good portion of the building. So again, that's another high expense that we have on the maintenance side out there. So we're going to be taking those off. Those expenses will build over time, but again, once we replace that, we'll start at ground zero.
So the maintenance cost would...
We'll expect it to drop because we're putting in new systems.
Great, thanks.
Yep.
Okay, Donna.
Okay, back to Sombrero Marsh, just for my own information.
Yep.
Is that totally owned by BVSD?
The building, the 1 acre lot, and the facility is owned by BVSD.
Okay.
Yep. And we lease it to Thorn.
Okay.
Yep.
I appreciate the invitation to visit the buildings. I've been advocating that for some time now, and I hope we can get that on the schedule with the new board members after we get back from vacation. And I encourage everyone who can go on that. It's actually really wonderful to see all the great work, and it's a nice time for Bach to be able to meet with board members and vice versa. So appreciate the invitation for that. So thank you for following up on that. I have a question for Ms. Jackman, because having worked in facilities forever, you hear that they don't really make a difference to learning and to environment, and I'm wondering if you could just refute that, or what your experience is as to the impact on learning and on your students and your staff from the new building.
Well, I could start with first just adding more light to the building. By the previous at Lafayette Elementary, I think we were full of smiles and lots of happiness, but just having outside natural light coming in with the new windows. And then we also, in all of our classrooms, got different lighting that I think just really allows, just has a different feeling. And our spaces just go and you just feel differently than you did. You don't feel as, I guess, closed in that way. So having that piece there, the audio enhancement helps tremendously with sound and focus and making sure every student's voice can be heard. The temperature in the building makes a big difference for sure. You know, I know all schools have different temperatures. I know Lafayette definitely had some rooms that were hotter than others, and having an even temperature helps in terms of kids being able to focus and staff being able to focus. The flexible furniture and just changing spaces just allows people to look at ways to do things differently. So sometimes when you're in a traditional building and you've kind of done things the same way, just by looking at the building and how you're using the space, looking at how you can change what you're doing to see how that will impact students. And really, now our kids are different, they learn differently, and we need to change buildings to adapt to that. So, and then a part I know with one of the students that presented tonight, just feeling safer. The way our building was set up before, it was safe, but the things we put in place through the bond just made it feel more safer for kids. It's definitely safer, but the kids will all say, I feel, now that we have that secure vestibule, I feel like, you know, nobody can get to us. And, you know, just things that it's a different reality for our kids, but that they're not worried about people coming in. They're just feeling more secure in the building. Did that answer the question there?
Yeah, no, thanks.
Yeah.
I think it's just helpful to have the kind of boots on ground perspective as to the impact. So thanks for being here.
Thank you. It really has made a huge difference to how we do things and how we look at our building. I now, as a principal, know every single nook and cranny of our building, but then I also know which parts really help and which parts maybe get in the way of some of the things we want to do, and how we use space, looking at how we can adjust how we've been currently using our space. So, thank you. Come play on the globe if anybody wants to come.
Rob, what is the timing on New Vista? It's just listed under future.
We're beginning to have conversations on New Vista, and we'll be bringing that forward in January. And to answer your question on the bus tour, that will happen in March, so we are making arrangements for that now with the Citizens Bond Oversight Committee.
And I just want to extend my thanks to Mike and to Bach. I've been to some of those meetings, and they really do take pen to paper, and to staff for, where are we in this overall budget? I think we're within 1% or something. I mean, it's amazing how well you've managed this, given the huge expenditures that we've made. So thank you for staff and for Bach for doing such a great job. And I love going to tours with Jean, because I always feel really comfortable that we know what's going on, and I know you've hired lots of really good staff and contractors, so thank you for all that you've done.
Okay, any other questions? All right, so our next up, thank you so much for being here. Our next item is 6.4, update of the October 2019 enrollment count and analysis trends. It's Glenn Segru.
Thank you. Glenn Segru, I'm the district planner. I'm going to go over some of the enrollment trends that have happened in the district over the last few years and see how that winds up into the current year, 2019, and hopefully provide some insights into where we're going after that. So this year, this chart shows the growth trend since 2009, the last 10 years. We did go through quite a growth trend coming off 2009 to about 2015. Average growth rate during that period was about 0.8%. We had a few years that were as high as 1.5%. That's since leveled off around 2015 and 2016. We've seen some declines since then. And this year, 2019, was a decline of around 200, which has been the most significant we've seen, certainly in the last 10 years. That's a decline rate of about 0.7%. The lighter section on this bar represents the charter schools in the district. We really haven't seen much change in them. They tend to fill their seats, so they've had fairly level growth, really for close to 10 years now. This chart shows absolute growth for the district. So the orange line shows how many students we gained or lost in absolute numbers for that year. So for example, 2013, right here, I gotta make some room. We gained about 400 students that year. We can see the downward trend that we've been talking around in 2015, going negative in 2016 and the last 2 years. This chart also shows the growth by level. So blue representing elementary, red representing middle, and the dark gray representing high school level. So in past years, we've seen more growth at the elementary, quite a few positive years, and even going before 2009, we had very strong growth at the elementary level. Those are some of the big classes that have progressed on, are now at middle, well, to a lesser extent middle, but more high school now. So we have seen that growth decline at the elementary level, and we've been seeing in recent years fairly significant decline at the elementary level. Middle school, some of those bigger classes have moved on to middle school, but now we're seeing those filter through and starting to see declines at middle as well. This year's decline at middle was especially a surprise. There was a few things that turned out differently than past patterns. So they were a little bit higher loss than in past years. We also see some leveling at high school, and I can talk about that as well. Now, this chart shows resident student growth. So these are just the students that live within our boundaries, not overall enrollment. Similar pattern, not exactly the same. Higher growth years in the past, with some waning growth in more recent years. This chart also shows student gains or losses by community. So this is based on where students live, not where they go to school. So we can see where there's pops and drops through specific communities throughout the district. It's a little messy, but if you focus on some of the colors like blue representing Boulder, you can see Boulder had the lion's share of the growth coming into 2015, and that's turned around quite significantly in the last few years. And in fact, Boulder leveling here in 2016, 2017, but going fairly negative the last 2 years, especially this year. Louisville also has been a growth driver in the past, and we're seeing that wane as well. And of course, we're seeing strong growth in Lafayette and Erie, and that's mostly just new development. They're doing about close to 500 in those two communities, 500 new single-family homes per year has been their pace the last few years, in addition to some apartments. This is the same chart, but shows just the elementary level. So elementary is important because these kids will be filtering up to the other grades, and so it gives us a little bit of insight into the future. So we see really the same trend, but just a little more exaggerated. We see Boulder coming off of its growth peak from the last decade, leveling out and really going negative at the elementary level in the last 3 years. We see growth picking up at Lafayette and Erie. We also see Louisville face some pretty strong growth early part of this decade, and that has also waned, and we're starting to see negative growth there as well. Now this chart shows how the grade distribution can affect enrollment. It's really kind of the bones of enrollment change in the district based on the different class sizes. Other things influence growth for sure, but this really lays the foundation about what kind of growth will be coming up in the future. So, I mean, the obvious example is if you have a relatively small kindergarten class and a big high school class, as we have now, you fundamentally have some loss built into the system. The one thing to keep in mind about this chart is there is natural growth built in the system. Just as the grades progress, kids move into the district and they enroll from private schools or from home schools, primarily at 1st and 6th and 9th grade. So there's a little bit of growth built into the system, and so it's important to look at the relative sizes, not the absolute sizes of the bars. Going on to kindergarten, we've had about 5 years of decreasing kindergarten size, and we had a little bit of a pop this year, probably in no small part to offering full-day programming. But we did have a little pop, but it's still a relatively small class, and you can see that here. Going through the rest of elementary, most of the classes now are really, you could say, bottomed out in terms of they're on the lower levels. So there's not a lot of small classes that can leave, maybe cause a little bit of enrollment growth, really kind of hanging low. The effect of this may be if our kindergarten classes hold, that we may not see quite as big losses in the future. For example, we had a relatively big 6th grade or 5th grade class graduate to 6. You can see that here, and that's being replaced by our current small kindergarten. So this year, that's a big contributor to our big drops. Next year, we'll have a small class leaving, and we'll see how our kindergarten class is at that time. Middle school, you can see this year, we had a fairly large 8th grade progress on to 9th grade. So that's going to cause some leveling right there and being replaced by a relatively small 6th grade, at least in compared to the other two classes at that level. And in high school, we can see most of those classes are large right now. Next year, the 8th grade class is still a larger class, so I would see some leveling in high school with that. But after that, we're going to be seeing smaller and smaller classes and cohorts moving into the high school level. This one looks funny. Okay. Another important part of enrollment change would be out-of-district enrollment. And in this district, we've had pretty steady growth in out-of-district really since open enrollment began in the 90s. And that's really peaked out in 2016, and we see some leveling in the few years after that. This year, we popped down a little bit more. We lost about 78 students over last year, and most of that was really focused at middle school. So for the incoming 6th grade class, new applications for open enrollment from out of district, for whatever reason, didn't show up like they have in the past. Another big component of enrollment change is just, a demographer would call it net migration, but it's just the flow of students coming into the district and leaving from year to year. This discounts incoming kindergartners and outgoing 12th graders and just looks at the students coming in and moving out. The Red line on top would represent students coming in. These students can be coming in just through as new move-ins, moving from other parts of the state or country into the district, or they may be enrolling from a private or homeschool. The red line on the bottom would be similar set of students, but students leaving for those same reasons. The important thing with this is the arrow, which represents the net gain between the two. So in the past, we've had some pretty healthy net gain over the years, positive in-migration to the district. This year, it ticked down just a little bit, contributing to some of that open enrollment loss. This year, we were at about 280, when in the past, we've been running about 350 net gain. So these are resident students only. So this is really kind of the other half with the out-of-district and resident dues. So we didn't lose students. It's not negative growth like we had in 2004, but we didn't grow as much in net migration as we have in the past. And in particular, sixth grade, again, I said earlier that we were a little surprised how sixth grade performed this year. As you can see, we were down in out-of-district, but I included this slide as well. This is the same slide of net growth district-wide, and again, not sure why, but big declines at middle school, mostly at sixth grade, a little bit at seventh grade in this regard. So, and the interesting thing about this is we had both increases in students leaving at this grade level and decreases in students coming in. So it was a double hit, and a fairly significant departure from the previous few years. So the last real component are the birth trends. And we've been on a negative birth trend for quite some time. That's been no surprise. Births are important because ideally they turn into preschoolers and kindergartners later. But there is a lot that happens. There's some kind of migration pattern like this that goes on between birth and preschool and kindergarten. We've had years we've had declining births and increasing kindergarten classes. More recently, we seem to be tracking more closely to births. So births are going down, kindergarten classes have generally been going down as well. And this chart shows when you break it out by Boulder and East District, we actually see some leveling in the eastern BVSD communities, at least in terms of the general trend. There's lots of ups and downs, but we do see some leveling in the births over the last few years. But we do see Boulder significantly declining just really through most of this decade. And another thing I wanted to add with this was the state demographer has spent quite a bit of time on fertility and what's been happening in the country, in the state, and presumably happening is consistent with what's happening at BVSD, and that is declining birth rates throughout. Some of that's due to some very successful teen pregnancy programs, but a lot of it has to do, according to the state demographer, is the migration that's been occurring since the recession. So we've gotten lots of young professionals moving in. A lot of them are in their 20s, have been in their 20s. A lot of these new migrants have been well-educated people. Women in particular tend to hold off childbirth. So what she's saying is a lot of the current generation of migrants moving into the district are in this area, and they'll be moving into these higher percentage age groups in the next few years. And she's hoping for a turnaround in the next year or two on births, at least. Of course, it'll be a while before we see that. But in summary, overall, district's down around 200 students, especially at elementary. Middle level saw greater declines than expected. Now, our resident student growth, or change, I should say, was down 141. So those are just the students in our district. So you can see the difference there between with 219 adding in the effect of out-of-district declines as well. Resident losses at elementary have been concentrated at Boulder, Louisville, and Superior, with Lafayette and Erie experiencing strong growth, especially at elementary. Kindergarten is still relatively small, but did make some gains in 2019, and the number of overall out-of-district students was down. Net migration, although positive, did decline, with most of the loss concentrated at the middle level. So any questions?
Yeah, thank you so much. I always love the enrollment report and appreciate all your work and your accuracy. And I'm sorry you were surprised at the middle school level.
Oh, yeah.
That was difficult. And I'll just make a comment. One of the reasons why I'm so interested in enrollment is that one of my children happens to be in the biggest grade in the district. And if you happen to be in a bubble year, you know what that feels like in an elementary school that's crowded, a high school that's crowded. And I think it was one of the first ways I got engaged with my local school accountability committee when Foothill was bursting at the seams. It now has 150 less students than when my daughter was there. It's pretty amazing. Any questions, Donna?
Not a question, but my son just moved back a year or so ago from Sweden after a 5-year residency there. And Sweden put out a video to encourage birth by having parents pay for their married kids to go on vacation. So, so I'm thinking we could start with that, and kindergarten might increase.
Okay.
We'll put that on the budget priority list. Other comments or questions? I do have a question. We heard about the growth in Erie and Lafayette, and 3 or 4 years ago there was some conversation about needing more schools there. Are we seeing the kind of growth we had expected? Is it a little less than we thought? How are we doing there?
It's come a little bit slower than expected, but it's really kicked in. I think you can see the last 3 years. Sometimes there's kind of an effect. You build and build and build, and there's people are moving in with kids that are 2 and 3, and you don't always think of that. And so I think we're kind of hitting that double effect now, where the younger kids and the new move-ins are coming in at once, and we're seeing bigger growth. The supply I think this year we're going to see a lot of apartments coming online, which are always interesting because they don't generally have as many kids as single-family detached, but there's just the sheer numbers of them will have an influence. Lafayette's starting to run out of supply of new residency lots, compared to what they have had. So we may see some slowdowns there, particularly in Ryan. But Erie's still platting a lot more, so that will probably maintain.
And do you still feel in Boulder most of the new supply has been apartments? And
Yes,
is that
very definitely,
those
yes.
have had almost zero yields of children?
Very low, yeah. Apartments and condos.
Yeah, okay.
A question I have. I noticed Meadowlark had grown by quite a bit in that 1 year. Do we see a migration from Boulder to Erie? We're losing them there again.
I don't know about Boulder per se, but it was one thing that I had to look at very closely was it didn't quite add up when I added all of the kids you would expect there at Meadow in the surrounding subdivisions. And I looked at it, and it was because it was people moving from other parts of the district to Erie. So it's not necessarily, when you're seeing all those units, it's not necessarily all kids coming from all over the world or whatever. There is, a good third or so that are actually coming from within the district.
Kathy?
I just think we can't underestimate what this is looking like from a budget perspective. I think we're in averaging now. Is that correct? If Bill was here, he could answer that question. But what the statute, or maybe Justin can, but what the statute allows you to do is kind of smooth out the decline over a period of years. And we've built our budget for so many years on growth. And we're not going to be able to do that anymore, either at the local level or the state level. And I just think it's a new normal for us. And it's going to be a big change for our community to get used to learning that we have to build our budgets on declining enrollment. So I just put that out there because I think it's going to take a while for people to get used to that. And when you look at even the out-of-district going down and you look at the numbers of other districts, it's because almost all our surrounding districts, maybe minus St. Vrain and Brighton, are also experiencing declining enrollment. So it's not just us. So I don't think we're going to grow our way out of it or take students from other districts to get out of it. I think we have to start learning how to budget within these declining numbers, and I think that's going to be a challenge.
Okay. Any other questions? Well, thank you so much.
Thank you.
All right, so board members, we can take a break now or after action. Okay, we have a strong yes. And just
That was a strong.
Okay, we're going to continue our meeting now. And this is the hazing meeting for new board members. That's why it's a 4 o'clock kickoff going well into the night. But I want to assure Stacy and Lisa they're really not always this long, as you know, so don't get worried. So our next item is number 7, action items, consent grouping. And for our new board members in the community, this is a list of things that it's anticipated we won't discuss, so we approve a number of items as a group. If you have questions about the item, but still probably plan to vote for it, you don't need to pull it, but if you think there's some chance that you won't vote for it, you do pull the item and you simply say, after I read them off, I'd like to pull the number, and you read the title. And then we'll go and discuss that item in the next item number 8, which is action items, or 9, whatever it is. So I'll read these off. That's how we start. 7.1, personnel items. 7.2, approval of minutes, November 12, 2019 special meeting. Approval of 7.3, approval of minutes, November 12, 2019 regular meeting. 7.4, approval of minutes, December 3, 2019 special meeting. 7.5, 2019 comprehensive annual financial report. 7.6, 2020 RTD contract for BVSD employee EcoPass program. 7.7, acceptance of donation, Manhattan Middle School. 7.8, acceptance of donation, Boulder Valley School District. 7.9, acceptance of donation, Eisenhower Elementary. 7.10, acceptance of donation, Fairview High School. 7.11, amendment to the construction manager general contractor contract for bond-funded improvement work at Foothill Elementary School. 7.12, amendment to the construction manager general contractor contract for bond-funded improvement work at Mapleton Early Childhood Center. 7.13, board acceptance of employment arbitration decision. 7.14, cancellation of December 24th, 2019 board meeting. 7.15, certification of mill levies. 7.16, change order to the construction manager general contractor contract for work at Superior and Ryan Elementary School. 7.17, closeout to the construction manager general contractor contract for bond-funded work at Heatherwood Elementary School. 7.18, closeout to the construction manager general contractor contract for bond-funded work at Horizons K-8 School. 7.19, closeout to the construction manager general contractor contract for bond-funded work at the Superior Elementary School. 7.20, ComSci contract for employee assistance program. 7.21, grant superintendent's office, local accountability system, Colorado Department of Education 19. All right, so board member, is there any item you would like to pull? Kitty?
I'd like to pull 7.13.
7.13, board acceptance of employment arbitration decision is pulled. Any other items board members would like to pull? Not hearing any. Can we get a motion to approve these items?
So moved.
By Kitty, seconded by Donna. Thank you. I have some comments. And the first is on 7.8. I just wanted to point out that that donation to the Boulder Valley School District is books from the Boulder bookstore valued at $165,000, and it's just an example of some of the great partners we have in the community that are helping us out. So it's just a comment, not a question, but a big thank you. I also wanted to point out, we already talked about the audit, which is what we're approving here, and also the accountability committee that Rob mentioned in the beginning of the meeting. And I also wanted just to point out that we are doing the EcoPass again, which is a great way to help reduce cars. We do create a lot of traffic across our 500 square miles of school district land. So I think that's a great initiative, and I'm happy that we're doing that. And then finally, we're certifying our mill levies. And I think Kathy wanted to mention that, but I'll just add before she starts that we're hoping to get more mill levy information out to the board in the form of a lunch and learn or work session where we just don't know what our schedule looks like, so that we all have a greater understanding of the wonderful mill levies, both override and total program fund. Kathy?
In the absence of Bill being here, I was hoping that Justin could just walk us through really briefly what that mill levy certification is and why we have to do it now. Because as you said, Tina, and as I've mentioned earlier, there's going to be a lot of mill levy conversations going forward, and school districts are all over the place. I think Aurora's like at 80 mills for school mills, and we're much lower than that. And I just think, especially for new board members, understanding the mill levies and the timing, just really briefly, I just think it would be really helpful. So thank you.
Thank you. Justin Patron, Director of Accounting Services. So at the risk of undermining your lunch and learn, I'm not sure how much detail we want to go into, but as we know, the School Finance Act is set by the state. They determine our big pie of how much we get our base funding, and then a portion of that is effectively covered by our local property taxes. So that component is about 25 mills. So that alone, we would be required, you, the board, would be required to certify to the counties so that they then levy and collect on our behalf those property taxes. From there, it gets a little more interesting because we have a history of positive and thankful support from our citizens. So we have a number of other levies that we are allowed to set. So those come in the form of the override, which is our 25%. There's a transportation levy. And so that piece gets a little more interesting because then we take the net assessed values as provided by each of our 3 counties, and then we take that assessed value information from the counties, and then we calculate what the mills are necessary to achieve the desired result. So just as a simple example, our 25%, the state says, well, it should be 255 million, so we get 25% of that and then have to kind of back into that calculation. And that's the information ultimately put forth to you in the packet, which generates approximately $355 million across all the mills. So I don't think I ruined any lunch and learn, but I'd be happy to answer any questions or follow up.
We can do questions at the lunch and learn. I don't think you stole their thunder. There's
Okay.
so
Yeah,
much
no,
to do here.
I don't think so.
Okay, thank you so much.
Sure.
And also, I
Best
just.
Award.
I'm sorry? Oh, thank you.
Thank you, Justin. I just think it's really important for whoever might be listening. I mean, we have the bond redemption fund, which you didn't talk about, and the capital construction. I think we're the only district in the state that has the capital construction, and some of these are go up with inflation and some don't. So maybe you could just talk a little about that. And I think it can't be emphasized enough that some we have control over and some the state sets. We don't get to come in and say, well, we'd really like to pay less, so we'll pay 20 mills. There's actually consequences in statute if you try to do that. So if you could just for a second just talk about those others so that we have a sense of what all of them are.
Yeah, sure. So for the moment, the School Finance Act is 25.023 mills, and that set doesn't change. So it generates more revenue as property values go up, but it doesn't really generate more revenue for us because it just means the state provides less. So just for context, that provides 183 million, and the state provides 60. So we've been on that kind of trend for quite a while where our piece is going up. In addition, I did mention the 25% override, which is just a function of total program as defined by the state. So that will go up absent the negative factor or the budget stabilization factor, which is nice. So that just goes up as total program goes up as determined by the state. We also get abatements, which are basically when folks throughout our counties in our district contest their property values and the counties give them money back. So it's kind of a hold harmless where we're allowed to go back then and recollect those in the following year. And so that's about $2.8 million this year, which has been trending up a little bit, as you might guess, with the increased property values. Folks are a little more inclined to contest those. Kathy, you mentioned the bond override. That one is interesting, but it's basically, we're just allowed to levy an amount sufficient to cover those debt repayments. So as you might guess, with the 2014 voter-approved bond, those payments have gone up a bit. Now, some of the old ones have dropped off, and we've done refinancings to save. But that one, we really just set the right amount to kind of maintain. We have a $7.3 million static transportation levy, so that one is a bit challenging because it just provides the same amount every year. Costs don't go down, so it's a bit of a challenge because it's static. And then, as you also mentioned, we have the Operation and Technology Fund, or the Capital Construction and Technology mill levy. And that one, as you recall, was 2016, voted $10 million to increase up to a maximum of 1 mil per year to a total of 4. And that is what's included, the last little incremental piece of that in this resolution.
And that was unusual in that the board was able, the ballot measure allowed us to increase that, so we didn't go for the fixed amount in the ballot measure. I just bring that up because that might be something we're going to have to consider going forward.
Yeah, and just for context, our net assessed value went up about 10% this year. So that mill grows at that rate and not something artificially kind of determined by the state. Yep.
All right.
Thank you. I think we need to get a dedicated time to really get, there's so many questions and so much to think about. So thank you so much.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Any other comments or questions? Yes.
On the accountability, I just want to say thanks to Rob and to Jonathan. I'm super excited that we're putting that forward and that we're looking at other metrics other than test scores and engaging DAC on that. So I just want to say thanks, and I look forward to that continued work and the board engagement. I'm really hoping that we can start having more conversations about where we are in accountability and conversations with our community so that we can make that an iterative process as opposed to a once-a-year check-in when we get UIPs. So thank you, Rob, for taking the lead on that. I really appreciate it.
Okay. Other comments or questions on the consent agenda? Laura, would you please call the roll?
Garcia.
Yes.
Gebhardt.
Yes.
Marquis.
Yes.
Myers.
Yes.
Sargent.
Yes.
Sweeney Moran.
Yes.
Zis.
Yes.
Motion passes.
All right, moving on to action items. 8.1 are the proposed courses and fee changes to the 2020-21 school year. And we do this every year, adjustments to our courses, and we get a lot of information.
They come to you. So in August, we get proposals from our schools for any new courses that they might like to offer, including changes to course titles, prerequisites, things like that. Those are then reviewed by the schools and by content area councils. Then they get reviewed by the district-wide curriculum coordinating council, which has representatives from across the different geographic areas. It has school personnel, teachers, administrators, and central office folks. There's a period of public review. It's reviewed by cabinet, and then it finally comes to you. So that's the full vetting process that these proposals go through before we bring them to the Board of Education. We also have some proposed increases in fees. And this evening I have Jennifer Garfield here, who is our Director for Curriculum and Standards, if you have any questions about any of the specific courses or changes.
Okay. So, and then we're ready to go for questions? Mm-hmm. Okay. I'll start with a couple questions. The Just Words course, does that address dyslexia in part?
So the Wilson Just Words is an intervention program that is for secondary level students that have learning disabilities related to decoding, which could include dyslexia.
Which could include, okay. And then with the 7th grade humanities, is that similar to the 8th grade humanities class? So those are schools that like what they saw in the 8th grade and they're extending it to the 7th grade? Okay. And how many middle schools will be doing that? Do you know?
I'm not
100% sure. I think 2 to 3. I'd
Okay.
have to check.
And then my other question was the newcomer content language. Is that a brand-new course? And what did we have before that met similar needs?
Right, so there are 6 new courses proposed by the CLDE, our Culturally Linguistic Diverse Education Department. And so, yes, one of those would be replacing our English language development courses. So these would be moving forward. They've been worked on by our teachers, our principals, and the ELD department as well. So it is a brand new course.
Okay, it looked great. I was just
Yeah,
curious.
they're
I hadn't
excellent.
really, yeah,
Yeah.
it's really neat. And I also just wanted to comment because of the robust bicycling community that you're doing a bicycle technology course. I'm sure that will be popular.
They're very excited.
What other questions? I took them all. I won't go first next time.
First, I wanted to say thank you for adding some CTE classes. I was excited to see the cybersecurity class being added and the bicycle class, like Tina said. I had a question about the technology fee. It says it's district-wide, 5 through 12. Is every high school paying the $45 every year? It shows up as district-wide, so it's not clear.
I believe that's just assessed at our schools that are participating one-to-web.
Other questions? Kitty?
I was interested in the broadcast journalism. So are all the high schools going to be offering that, or just some of them?
It's their choice, so high schools can pool that course if they're interested.
Okay. And so then will they be producing news segments to be broadcast at the school or something? What are they going to do with that?
I'm not sure of the exact details on their broadcast. I'd have to look back at the course.
So it would be a shame if they learned
Right,
all
I
about
would
it but didn't
imagine.
actually get to show it to anybody.
District-wide.
They will be producing content. I think that what we're unsure of is their distribution of it.
Okay.
So. For concurrent enrollment, Dr. Crespo, did you want to address that one? No. So, come on, come on.
I had a language teacher asking me about this. Is the reason I'm asking and seeing what the standard.
So our concurrent rate of tuition is what's covered by the district. There are some courses that require specific fees if they have licensing, certification, books, and then some of those costs related to student costs around student service center, things like that, that's the responsibility of the student. Often if we know of a situation or we are made aware of a situation, we'll provide support. But in our contract, in our MOU agreements, it's really just based on the state, which is the tuition fee for those that were agreed with at the concurrent rate.
Thank you.
Other questions? Yeah.
Will there be an effort to assess the $45 fee to all the high schools?
The
Technology.
fee is only intended for those schools that are participating in the one-to-web program, and it's a school choice about whether they decide to participate in
If
that.
they wanted to use that money to support technology in the schools, that would be something different then?
That would have to be something different, yeah.
Other questions or comments? All right. Do we have a motion to, I should have done this earlier, do we have a motion to approve 8.1?
So moved.
By Kitty, seconded by? I'll second it. And Laura, would you please call the roll?
Garcia.
Yes.
Gebhardt.
Yes.
Marquis.
Yes.
Myers.
Yes.
Sargent.
Yes.
Sweeney Moran.
Yes.
Zis.
Yes.
Motion passes.
All right, so now we will take our pulled action item 7.13, board acceptance of employment arbitration decision. Kitty?
I move we do not pass this item.
Okay, so moved. Do we have a second? Second by Richard. Any discussion or questions? All right, hearing none. Laura, would you please call the roll? And this is a decision to not accept this proposal, all right? So a yes vote means you do not want to accept it.
Garcia.
Yes.
Gebhardt.
Yes.
Marquis.
Yes.
Myers.
Yes.
Sargent.
Yes.
Sweeney Moran.
Yes.
Zis.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Okay, our next item is a study item. 9.1, Elysia Sanchez Elementary Priority Improvement Plan. Again, we spoke a little bit, and board members, you received information, just a review of what the process is when a school is placed on a priority improvement plan by the Colorado Department of Education, and we're fulfilling those steps this evening. So, and Kathy, you had a question. Do you want to do that before or after the presentation? Okay.
Do we have a presentation, or are we just going to describe the process?
Yes, that's a great question. So as a study item, it is designed for board members to be able to review the information and then ask any additional questions that they have. And the reason that it went on the agenda as a study item is because this essentially is a repeat of the information that Principal Rivera presented to the board in October.
And I had a question. This isn't the final template, right? So this isn't exactly what we'll be voting on in January?
Well, interestingly enough, we are currently in conversation with the Colorado Department of Education because in the turnaround department, they are considering, since we are engaging in the UVA work as part of the CDE School Improvement / Turnaround grant, that they are considering accepting the 90-day plan that you have in front of you in lieu of the UIP template, since it does contain the same information. So when it comes before you as an action item in January, it may very well be in this same format. If not, we will transfer the identical information to the official CDE form and bring that before you in January.
Perfect, thank you. Board members, is there anything in this plan? Do you need some highlights from our staff? Everyone got it? Yeah, Kathy?
Could we just get an update about how it's been going since the last presentation? I know it's been a little over a month, but are you feeling like it's the right course and that we're achieving what you were hoping to, given this plan?
So as we go to the end of the semester, we are going to be looking at data as we're finishing up some of our summative work with iReady and some other things that we're doing together. Funny enough that we've already been talking about the next 90-day plan, so we do a couple of these a year. So everything that we put into the work at the beginning, as I read on the last board meeting, was all those action items that you saw in this 90-day plan have all been done. It's probably the most work I've ever done in the school myself. And then now moving into the next phase of this, it's essentially going to take these priorities, these action items, and how can we further make gains with our staff of what we're doing right now. So we'll be going to the mid-year retreat with UVA in January. We had a leadership team meeting today talking about how we can, what are the action items we're going to take going into the next 90-day plan. So essentially crunching in a lot of work going into the next semester. I already have it all up here. Now it's just like getting the work done with our staff to put that on paper and move forward with it. But I mean, we are pleased. I don't have anything to present right now in terms of like summative data, but looking at all of our formative stuff up to this point, we're hopeful that we'll see some gains on our school performance framework coming in, whenever that comes out in July. So things feel like they're moving forward with this, and we are hopeful with what we have going on right now.
Will there be some data in January that you will have had since we've closed out the semester that we'll be able to look at when we look at this again?
Absolutely. All the schools right now are going through their summative data right now with iReady. We already have some formative assessments with math. It's not as strong in terms of data-wise, so we're sitting creating our own and looking at those those results together, but we will have more data moving forward with that. And we'll be able to see and look at, because we have goals written, and you see them at the top of the 90-day plan, mostly focus on growth, and you see the last year's results and what we're hoping to achieve. So it's going to give us some good information going forward, like what do we need to press, what do we need to move forward with, so that we can make that growth.
And I know there was a letter sent out at the beginning of the year giving the dates of the feedback, but if there have been more informal outreach to the parents to engage them in this work?
I'm sorry, say that
Has there been more informal outreach?
for the VPAC?
No, to the parents to engage them in the work. There was a letter that was sent out that gave them this date, the formal letter. So I'm just wondering what there's been done informally, because we obviously weren't overwhelmed by the feedback from the community tonight. And I just want to make sure that they've been engaged and supportive of this.
Well, I actually did double check with Jonathan Dings, which I said, so in the past, what should we expect? How many parents have you had come to a meeting? And he said 0. So apparently we are consistent this evening with past experiences that have been similar. So really interesting that you asked this question right now, because when we were before you talking about the UVA work and the 90-day plan and how that intersects with the new, the district reorganization and the school support team network work. And as a result of our first strategic school support meeting that we had with Joel and the entire network support team in the East Network, we created, as part of that action plan, an outreach program for the school to be able to engage parents more fully in this work. So love that you asked that, because that is in progress as we speak.
And what have you seen? All I would say is past results have gotten us to where we are now, so that's not that helpful, but I know you're jumping into this, and I really appreciate the parent engagement, because that is so critical. So you're seeing the community engage, is what you're seeing? Is that what I'm hearing?
As a priority, as an understanding that as we went through the process working up to the S3M, or the Strategic School Support Meeting process, we looked at data and we looked at needs. And we looked at what was already being put into place through the 90-day plan, and what else do we need to do to further water the roots, if you will, of the work that is stated in the 90-day plan. And one very obvious need that we were able to discuss as an entire East Network team is, okay, and now what about parents? Because the entire focus of the 90-day plan is on instruction. It's looking at the systems and structures that we need to change, implement, create, make consistent across the whole school. But part of the 90-day plan did not include parent outreach. And so that has been the next part of the work through the S3M process. And we're excited about that. And so Ari Gerzon-Kessler is part of that. And we've been working together to that end.
Thank you, that's great.
I had a question. We went on a tour of the school, which was terrific, and I think I learned as much about the plan there as I did when we went through the plan here in the boardroom. But I'm wondering if we'll be able to separate the impact of the initiatives and some of the instructional pieces from the impact of the smaller class sizes and the increase in the ratios of adults to students in the school, because it was pretty noticeable. And I'm just wondering how we know, or how we, and I don't believe there's a single silver bullet for anything, but how do we understand what has the most impact?
I'll take this one. Okay. I don't know, to the extent that you would separate those things. Right. I think it's a combination of things. I will say that there's a laser-like focus at Elysia Sanchez, that there's a lot of intentionality, that there is a culture of that we can make this happen. I think that you saw that board as we went and visited these classrooms and visited the school. The culture is going well. I think that after we get the results, and again, hopefully that we'll see the growth that we're and we will and see the fruits of our labor, so to speak, that then we will have to continue to engage and start to think about, what is it that made the difference, and engage our professionals. But I don't know that you can ever separate and isolate when you're thinking about school improvement. But I would say that certainly with the challenges that Elysia Sanchez is having smaller ratios of kids for teachers to engage with is certainly a step in the right direction.
Thank you. Donna?
And I appreciate the idea that there's many variables in solving this problem, and I don't think you can pull any one away to separate it out. It's just like reading a research paper and seeing all the variables that are involved, but the outcome in the end is what we're shooting for, so thank you.
Richard?
In your 90-day action plan, you have 3 priorities, and you've pretty much accomplished these 3 priorities already. Is that what I'm hearing you say?
I would say that if you look at the action items under those 3 priorities of what we set out to attain this first semester, the answer would be yes to that.
Now, in talking about family engagement, community involvement, are you going to make one of those a priority item, like the next 90 days, it'll be a priority item?
Absolutely. We're actually already in the conversation with that. After we had our S3M meeting, one of the things that did come out of it was just like we need to have there's a definite need to have that family engagement. So I think probably maybe a week or 2 weeks after that, we already set course with Ari on some of the things that he discussed here actually that night that we presented as well, together with him, with our leadership team, with our family resource center manager. We've already met, we've already put things in motion. It will be on our plan for next semester. Most of it's going to be probably around surveying, like what are the needs of our community, what are the needs of our families. Ironically enough, the grant for that position of the family resource center position at Sanchez, the grant's coming up this semester, so it's actually a good time that coincides together to say like what are the needs and what do we need to support through that grant together. So it's all coming up in the conversation, and it will be in the next 90-day plan as part of the priority number 3, the big rock number 3.
So we'll see it in writing?
You will see it in writing.
Okay.
Okay, Kathy?
I think this is a question for you, Rob. So to follow up on what Tina said, while I recognize that Sanchez is our school that's on the clock, we have students in need like this across the district, and we're partnering with UVA. I'm wondering what kinds of lessons we're going to be able to take from this work across different schools where we have populations and, a pretty large achievement gap. And maybe at some point we could get a report back on that as to what we think are the most important levers for trying to close that achievement gap from lessons that we've learned here.
Absolutely. I absolutely think that there will be great lessons to learn from both Columbine and Elysia Sanchez in the way that we're going about the work. And I think that as we engage our leaders and as they go to their mid-year conference, that they'll be bringing their teacher leaders along with them to begin to really engage and distribute that leadership in the building. They have really done a great deal of work on instructional infrastructure, and I would tell you that today some of the work in our partnership with UVA is influencing some of the 1A and 1B work that we're already doing within the strategic plan. I think Tina got this right. There isn't a silver bullet. There are systems and structures and infrastructure at a systems level that we have to work on. And I think that we're really leaning on our partners at UVA and the work that they've done to shape some of that. But when I think about the practices that I know that they're going to see in January around formative assessment and some of the things that have worked in some of the most successful turnaround work in the country around how do you create really strong formative assessment structures and how do you allow that to drive instruction. And there's a lot that we can learn, but it's also going to take time. Right, I would be lying to you if I told you after the first year we would have all the answers from Sanchez to fix and fix all of our achievement gaps. I think I've said this before. These gaps didn't happen overnight. We're not going to close them overnight. I think that we have to do the right thing and have the discipline to do the right thing time and time again. Learn from those opportunities and begin to figure out how we scale those through our new systems of support. And training, and hopefully begin to scale that work. But this is a multi-year effort, board. And as excited as we get and as fast as we want to see what's the proof that it's working, I'm here to tell you it will take time. I think the proof that's working is when you go and see the work that's happening. I'm fully confident as someone who's been in a lot of schools and a lot of turnaround schools over the course of my career. I'm very optimistic of what's happening at Sanchez, at Columbine. The leaders are doing the right work. So I'm excited. I'm anxious as anybody, but I just want to set expectations. This will take time.
Thanks, Rob. That's mostly my question is how can we scale this to our other schools? And so you answered that, so thank you for talking about that. I get that we aren't going to see turnaround in a year, but it's really exciting to hear this work.
Any other questions or comments about this study item? We'll be looking at it again in January. All right, very good. The next study item is 9.2, a resolution 1938 in support of a voter registration awareness week in Boulder Valley School District high schools. That was the presentation that Molly Fitzpatrick from the Boulder County Clerk and Recorder gave. Any conversation about this item? Kitty?
I'm just really glad we're doing this, and I'm glad that the clerk and recorder is pushing for this, because one of the best things we can do for our society is to encourage students to grow up to be active voters and to take part in our democracy. And I also noticed a little typo. What a surprise. Hang on, I have to find it.
Kitty Luke's going to ask a quick question.
Yeah.
Are we bringing this back for action then in January?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, I found it. In the third whereas. Okay, never mind.
We can take it out. Any other comments or questions? All right, so we don't need to do anything with that. That's great. 9.3 is agenda setting. Well, we talked a little bit about agenda setting, and we're going to use this time to talk about topics you want to see, and those will inform our prioritization process. I wanted to start to talk about a couple, because we didn't put an item on the agenda on this, on some of the different roles board members can play in committee work. So we have the first person that we need is someone to be our liaison to the District Accountability Committee. They meet on the first Tuesday of every month at 6:15 for about an hour and a half. And you don't need to make up your mind now unless it's something you definitely want to do. So
I'm happy to keep doing it if nobody else wants to.
Oh, okay. Oh, this is great. This is good feedback. So we've got one already. Would anyone like to compete? Or if other people are interested, just let me know or let Kitty know. I'm sure you can work something out.
Well, and we can show up.
Anyone
We
can
just
show
need to
up.
let Rob know ahead of time if we're going to show up
Yeah.
there. And
You can-
Laura.
If you intend to show up ahead of time, I do need to know ahead of time, because the DAC meeting, I post it with the DAC public meetings. I do not post it as a Board of Education public meeting.
Okay. All right, so that's, there's the DAC. We have historically had a legislative liaison or two, and these are people who might have more connection with our lobbyists and Rob when it comes up to legislative initiatives down at the Capitol. They might go down there and advocate, which I did. I had this role. And is there anyone who's, if you're interested, the legislative session starts second week of January, first week of January. So if you're interested, let me know. You can send me an email. I know Kathy's interested. Are you going to be interested again? No?
I didn't do anything, so no.
Okay, Stacy might be maybe. Okay. So we'll sign up Kathy. And you can always, and that's another one, you can always go.
Right.
Just let someone know. And we're all going to go and have lunch with our legislators soon.
Can I ask a question on that?
Yes.
So if there's a bill that's coming up, what do you want the process to be, Rob, if we're going to go down? To let you know and you'll let Tanya and Ernestine know?
Yeah, I would say
or-
that for the board, let me know if there's something that is aligned to the legislative priorities, and it is on behalf of the board, let me know, and I can connect Tanya and Ernestine to let them know you'll be down there. So as our lobbyists, they can make sure that we connect you to the right people and make sure that our voices are heard.
And then there's also CASB Days at the Capitol, and something we haven't done in the past that we could talk about at the beginning of the year, which is taking students down, which I think is a pretty cool thing for students to go and actually see our legislature in session. And CASB has a couple days where they sponsor that and pay for lunch and all that, so maybe at the beginning of the year we can figure out if we want to do that. I don't know how we'd pick the students, but I just want to put that out there for conversation.
Who really pays for lunch?
We do.
I mean, it comes back to us anyway.
Remind me again when that legislative lunch is
The 16th, it's Monday.
and where?
At the
Denver?
Capitol.
We'll resend out all the information for everybody.
Okay, so we also have the Accountability Group initiative that Rob is talking about is a partnership with Boulder Valley and a couple of other districts to come up with these measures. And Kathy has asked to be a part of that group as a board liaison. She was instrumental in the work that went on to create it. And I'm just wondering if the board is okay with that. So. No, it's not a vote. No, we don't vote on DAC or anything. We could, but that would have been unnoticed. And then Kathy's still a CASB board, which is not on the CASB board, which is not has nothing to do with our board, except that she has to be on our board to qualify. And she has been going to the Federal Relations Network meetings as part of that duty, and CASB pays for that, correct?
They did last year. I'm not sure if they will this year, but I am the Boulder liaison for FRN right now.
You're the Boulder liaison. So, and I think you were interested in that, but it seems like we already have one.
Yes, I just got an email from Matt Cook asking, because I said I was interested in it, and he said we needed more people from CD too.
Oh, okay, well then.
So I'll check in with Matt to find out what the status is on that committee.
And I'll respond to his email.
Perfect. We can have two. More influence. So we've got DAC liaison. Then we have, we started having a CBOC liaison, which Kathy's been doing. How does everyone feel about that? Okay. Yeah? Okay. We have the audit committee, which is Kitty as treasurer and our community representative, Bob Smart. Just a reminder that that is also, just like all of these, a meeting anyone can go to. So go if you want. So a second person can go. We have a district athletic review committee, and we have traditionally had a board liaison. That was Shelley. Do we want to continue to have a board liaison on that committee? Okay, and Stacy?
I was on that committee as a community member, so I could
Okay.
easily be the board liaison to that committee.
Okay. All right. And then we have two committees where we have not had liaisons. That is the technology committee. The technology committee is board appointed, right? Is that board or is that you? And then we created the air quality committee. And on those two, I've never seen a need personally to have a liaison, but I just wanted to bring them up since we have new board members, that we know that we have these board appointed these board created committees. So any thoughts there? Okay. If it changes, we can talk about it. Yes.
So back in the day, there used to be a board member that went to the district parent council meetings as well. That hasn't happened in probably, I don't know, 6-7 years. But I
Okay.
just thought I would put it out there that it's nice every so often when a board member attends, because it puts a little validity to their group as well. So I just thought I'd throw it out there.
Okay. Rob, how do you feel
We get notice
about
about
that?
when those meetings are? When do they meet, DPC?
Once a month. Is it Thursday?
On Wednesdays, typically the
Wednesday.
second or third Wednesday of
Second
the
or
month.
third Wednesday. No, board members are always welcome.
And I can give whomever might be interested a copy of the schedule as well.
Maybe you could just post the schedule so we could figure out when it is.
Yeah, and maybe it's something that we do quarterly or something like that.
Absolutely, whatever, pleasure of the board. I'm
Okay.
happy to have you there. And to Stacy's point, Stacy was a DPC chair last year, co-chair, tri-chair. It's great. It's a great group of parents who really helps us give feedback, and it's great.
Another option is that we could also rotate board members on that particular committee, which might be kind of nice because it's not really there's no thread to it. Right. Every meeting is a new meeting to some extent. So, because I know that we all like to engage with our community, so maybe that's a good rotational option. And then the other pieces, and just so you know, that I meet with Rob every quarter with the Chancellor of CU, one of the Boulder commissioners, the Boulder City Council, and that's it, right? So those four? Yeah. City, county, CU, and the school board. So we meet just once a quarter, and it's an array of topics. And that's just because of the unique area with the county and CU with Boulder. The other piece is we're making an effort to schedule meetings with all of our city councils, elected official to elected official, so that we can interact with our peers across the county, the district. Any other committees that are popping to mind? Oh.
I was just thinking NSBA. Wasn't Shelley a liaison for NSBA?
That's the FRN.
That's National School Board Association, and that's why I've been a little confused about what's FRN versus NSBA, so.
I would love, you've brought this up, Rob, at some point to talk about, I know budgets are tight, but the board's never gone to an NSBA conference, and other boards that I hear that go to it find it to be a really good professional development experience, so at some point it might be.
I think Shelley
No, she went, no, I'm talking about the national conference. Shelley went to the FRN, but we never saw her there. She was there, so, but I'm talking about the one that all the school boards go to, that's, I think, in April. And a couple of years ago, Donna, it was in Denver. But all I can do is report back from what I've heard from other board members, that they think it's a really positive experience. So it might just be something to put on a pin in for a further conversation.
I would agree with that. I think that it is an incredible professional development opportunity for board members. It's a big commitment. You're traveling to Washington, D.C.
I think this year it's in Chicago, but
Is it
anyway.
in Chicago?
Yeah. Sorry, Rob, I didn't mean to cut you off, but it's a great conference. And it's kind of like CASB convention on steroids, because it's school boards from all over the country. So they get really high quality presenters and really high quality performance. Last year, Richard, there was a mariachi band, which I keep meaning to show you because I videoed it because it was so amazing, these kids. So anyway, it's just something to talk about. And then I just want to put out there that CASB has something called the Legislative Resolutions Committee, the LRC. You don't have to be a member of it. You just can't vote, but it meets like every other Friday through the session, and it's a really good way. And you can phone in. You don't have to go. They have Zoom ability. And so once those start up, I'd like to maybe figure out a way to let everyone know when they are, because you could let Laura know, because it's a really good way if you want to know what's going on at the Capitol to kind of get an up-to-date sense of what's happening, because Matt Cook and others are on those calls, and I think it's just something we haven't done a whole lot of, but this might be an interesting session for people if they want to, and you don't have to do every one either, but it's just out there as a resource.
And for the NSBA, can you send one school board member, or is that considered a group activity?
Send whoever you want. I go for CASB still, but I've never gone for BVSD.
Okay. And that's all I have with committees, unless someone can think of something else. And we still have some committees in policy, if you read our policy, that we don't hear from all the time. Those, I think, are being reviewed at some point. Okay, fantastic. Other agenda items? No? All right, so with that, I would like to adjourn the meeting.
Tina, we have one person that wants to speak.
Oh, I'm sorry, I forgot about that. We have one speaker. The person came a little bit late and just missed it.
Hi, thank you for letting me speak to you tonight. My name is Peggy Dara, and I have two kids that go to Ryan Elementary, 2nd grade and 5th grade, and I am the president of the PTA. I learned a lot tonight, and I plan on coming to more meetings. And I think it was very timely of me to be here, because I heard about the budget, the enrollment, and that's everything that I'm here to talk about tonight. Last year, I listened to many parents' concerns about the growing population at Ryan Elementary and how many of our class sizes were at the max. And it was especially troubling since we have a higher than average group of kids that have needs respect to special education, reading plans, free and reduced lunch, etc. Last year, again, I just listened because I felt like there was nothing we could do until the class numbers went over the teacher-agreed contract numbers. Plus, we had a new principal and Rob was new, and I was just figuring people have to, see this through, watch his 100-day plan. Now, today, Ryan is busting at its seams, or should I say, has busted out of its seams. Since October 2016, Ryan's population has grown by 132 students. When Meadowlark opened and Lafayette Elementary School's number went down by 170 students, Ryan's population still went up by 24 students, even though we lost students to Meadowlark. We have the district's attention, and we are grateful for the support that we have received. The assistant principal, part-time academic tutor, remodeling of the office. However, this overcrowded school has been a disruption to the teachers and the students. Even though our principal will say, sometimes she even says it's an opportunity, but it is a disruption. Sorry, I wrote this. So, since I'm out of time, basically, we saw the numbers in September and October that showed that Ryan was going to be out of space. But the portable that we're not getting until March. The school year is pretty much over, and we've already outgrown it. So even when we get this portable, we've still outgrown it. I hear it's going to be plumbed, and located between the preschool and K2 playgrounds. As we know, this eyesore will not go anywhere. Once they plumb this thing, it's going to be there. So, and listening to all this, one thing I heard was it's a 5-year bubble. So a portable is a good fix. I had a hard time understanding what that bubble was until I saw the presentation, and maybe it's based on the birth trends. However, like the other man was saying, there's new neighborhoods, there's condos, there's apartments. Those apartments are getting 700 units, and they're all zoned for Ryan Elementary. I just don't see this going away. So I'm here to ask, and I'm just me, and I'm going to talk to Rob in a little bit, that maybe we can have an expansion to the school, like build the school out, make it, instead of the Band-Aid approach of a portable, maybe we can come up with a plan to build out the school over the summer so it incorporates all the students and teachers within the like you said, the school year is pretty much over in March. And I just feel like adding this portable is just going to be another disruption to the school year. It's going to be right outside the doors. And then maybe that bond money, we can find some of that bond money and just kind of move it over to Ryan. But again, I'm just here. I'm going to be here more often, and I've learned a lot, and I wish there were more parents here to support everything that you all do. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, and now we'll really adjourn it. Oh, we're going to do,
I just have one quick question in terms of Ryan Elementary School. How many kids open enroll into Ryan?
I don't have that information right now. I'll have to get back to you on that.
Thank you for sticking it out Thank you for sticking it out and for your public comment. Really appreciate that.
Thank you. Okay.